Sinead O'Connor lit a match on live television and dared the world to look away. That kind of courage, terrifying, irreversible, is what separates the legends from everyone else. Steve Harwell fronted Smash Mouth from the fringes of the music world and somehow landed in the center of a generation's memory. Michael Gambon spent decades proving that the greatest actors don't announce their greatness. They simply inhabit whatever room they walk into, and the room changes. Shannon Doherty fought loudly and publicly and refused to be quietly sidelined by Hollywood, by illness, by anyone. David Crosby burned through more lives than most people get. Brilliant, flawed, unrepentant, still singing. Tony Bennett sang into his 90s because the song was never finished. Some artists don't stop. Some careers don't close. Picture a soundstage in Burbank, California. The year is 1987. A man in his 50th year sits in a makeup chair, staring at himself in the mirror. He has been acting professionally for over 2 decades. He has done off-Broadway. He has done children's television. He has done bit parts that went nowhere. He is not a star. By the conventional logic of Hollywood, the window has already closed. Men who haven't made it by 40 rarely make it at all. And yet, something is about to happen that will rewrite every assumption about how a career and a life can unfold. That man is Morgan Freeman, and the role he is about to play, a streetwise chauffeur named Hoke Colburn in the stage-to-screen adaptation of Driving Miss Daisy, will not be the moment he breaks through. That comes a little later. The real turning point is quieter, more personal, and far more dangerous than a single film. Morgan Freeman was born on June 1, 1937, in Memphis, Tennessee, the youngest of 5 children. His mother, Mame Edna, raised him largely on her own, and his early years were defined by movement. From Memphis to Greenwood, Mississippi, then to Gary, Indiana, then back again. Stability was not the word for it, but what those years gave him was observation. He learned to watch people. He learned to listen in a way that most people never do. He discovered acting almost by accident. At 9 years old, a teacher cast him in a school play. He won a statewide drama competition. That early recognition lodged something in him that wouldn't leave. By the time he was a teenager, he had turned down a partial music scholarship to pursue drama. That choice, unpractical, against the grain, made with almost no financial safety net, was his first real gamble. The Air Force came next. He enlisted in 1955 and trained as a radar technician. But what he actually wanted was to fly. He was stationed in California, took his first flying lessons, and began to understand something about himself. He was drawn to things that required absolute focus, absolute presence. Flight, acting, 2 arts that punish distraction. He left the military in 1959 and moved to Los Angeles, then New York, chasing theater. The 60s were lean. He studied at the Pasadena Playhouse and at the Gene Frankel Theater Workshop. He worked as a dancer at the 1964 World's Fair. He took whatever came. And for years, whatever came wasn't enough to build a career on. The breakthrough that most people don't know about arrived not on a film screen, but on a television set, in living rooms across America, every weekday morning. From 1971 to 1976, Morgan Freeman played Easy Reader on The Electric Company, the PBS children's show. He was cool, magnetic, and wildly funny, a character beloved by an entire generation of American children who had no idea they were watching a future Oscar winner. He threw himself into it. He was grateful for it, and it kept him solvent during years when the dramatic roles he actually wanted were not coming. But here is the thing about The Electric Company. It was also, in a quiet way, a trap. When you become known for something, the industry wants to keep you there. Freeman understood this. He didn't resent the show, but he knew it wasn't the destination. So when it ended, he turned back toward theater, back toward the serious dramatic work he had always believed he was capable of. The stage years that followed were extraordinary in ways that rarely get their due. He did Shakespeare, he did off-Broadway productions that earned him real critical attention. In 1978, he appeared in The Mighty Gents on Broadway, a role that showed what he could do when given the material to do it with. Critics noticed, industry insiders noticed, but Hollywood, for the most part, looked away. The 1,980 seconds began the slow turn. He appeared in films, in supporting roles, doing what character actors do, making the scene work, making the lead look better, disappearing into the frame. Then came Street Smart in 1987. He played Fast Black, a pimp who is menacing, intelligent, and completely alive on screen. The performance earned him his first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. He was 49 years old. The industry, suddenly, was paying attention. And this is where the story gets genuinely complicated. Because Morgan Freeman, at the precise moment when Hollywood was ready to offer him a very specific kind of career, the dangerous black man, the threatening figure in genre films, made a different choice. He didn't chase Fast Black. He went toward Hoke Colburn in Driving Miss Daisy, a gentle, dignified, deeply human portrait of an older black man navigating the American South during the Civil Rights era. The role earned him his second Oscar nomination, this time for Best Actor. He won the Golden Globe, 2 nominations in 3 years. But no Oscar yet, and the roles being offered were not always worthy of what he had demonstrated he could do. This is the real crossroads, the years between 1990 and 1994, when Morgan Freeman had proved his greatness and was now faced with the question of what to do with it in an industry that had a long history of not knowing what to do with black leading men of a certain age and a certain gravity. His answer was to keep betting on quality over safety. The Shawshank Redemption came in 1994. Directed by Frank Darabont, adapted from a Stephen King novella, it was not a guaranteed hit. It performed modestly in theaters. By the metrics Hollywood uses to measure success in real time, it underperformed. The studio was not thrilled, but Morgan Freeman's narration, that voice, those words, that texture, turned out to be the soul of the entire film. When Shawshank found its audience on cable and home video, it became one of the most beloved films in American cinema history. Freeman received his 3rd Oscar nomination for Best Actor. He did not win. But the film did something the Oscar could not. It made Morgan Freeman's voice a cultural touchstone. His narration in that film is quoted, remembered, and replayed in a way that few performances in any medium are. That is not luck. That is the result of a specific artistic decision. To play Red with complete honesty, to strip away performance and simply be present. In a career full of good choices, that one may be the finest. The 90s were, for Morgan Freeman, a kind of second prime. Seven paired him with Brad Pitt in 1995, and the film's success proved that he could anchor a mainstream thriller without compromising the dignity he brought to every role. $1 Million Baby, in 2004, directed by Clint Eastwood, finally brought him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. His fourth nomination, his first win. He was 66 years old. There is a version of this story that ends there. Oscar in hand, legacy confirmed, a graceful wind-down into prestige projects and ceremonial appearances. Morgan Freeman chose a different version. He kept working. He took roles in franchise films, in superhero movies, in broad comedies. He lent his voice to documentaries. He narrated March of the Penguins, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. He played the President of the United States. He played God. He played characters who existed as moral anchors in other people's stories. And he did it without condescension, without coasting. He co-founded Revelations Entertainment with his producing partner, Laurie McCreary, with the explicit goal of developing projects that told stories the mainstream industry was not telling. That company has been operating for decades and has produced both film and television projects, including the National Geographic series Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman, which ran for 7 seasons and brought his curiosity about science, cosmology, and the nature of existence to a mass audience. It was not a vanity project. He was genuinely interested. He asked real questions. That intellectual restlessness has always been part of who he is. In 2018, allegations of workplace misconduct were made public by CNN. Multiple women described uncomfortable behavior on set and in professional settings. Freeman issued an apology. The Screen Actors Guild Award he had been slated to receive that year was not rescinded, but the moment cast a shadow over his public standing in a way that was impossible to ignore. It was serious, it was contested, and it forced a public reckoning with the distance between a carefully constructed screen image and the more complicated reality of any human life. He has continued to work since then. He has not retreated. He has not issued a comeback narrative or staged a rehabilitation tour. He has simply kept showing up, in films, in television, in interviews that reveal a man who is thoughtful, opinionated, occasionally contradictory, and not particularly interested in performing humility for an audience that expects it from him. He is, at the time of this script, in his late 80s. He wears a compression glove on his left hand, the result of nerve damage from a 2008 car accident in Mississippi that was severe enough to require emergency surgery. He has spoken about chronic pain. He has not used it as a narrative of suffering. He has spoken about it the way he speaks about most things, plainly, without drama, as a fact of life that he is navigating. He still flies. He has a pilot's license and has spoken about the freedom that being in the air gives him. There is something in that image, the man who wanted to fly at 22, who spent decades on the ground building a career, who is now in his late 80s and still choosing altitude, that feels true to who he is in a way that 1,000 interviews could not capture. Morgan Freeman did not have the career that Hollywood expected him to have. He did not peak at 30 and burn out. He did not settle into the comfortable roles that came with his early recognition. He built something over 60 years of work that almost no one builds. A body of craft so consistent, so serious, so deliberately chosen that the industry eventually had no choice but to acknowledge it on his terms. The measure of a career is not the first win. It is the arc. It is what the choices add up to when you stand back and look at all of them together. And when you do that with Morgan Freeman's career, what you see is not a story about talent alone. You see a story about patience, about refusal, about a man who understood very early that the industry would try to define him, and spent his entire professional life insisting, quietly but completely, on defining himself. That is still the work in progress. That is still the story being written.